If you don't know where to start with Denmark's NIS2 laws and regulations, then this video is for you. So I'll show you which laws and regulations did Denmark publish as part of this NIS2 transposition process. I'll also share the screen and show you what are the main requirements from all of these laws and regulations. And I'll also show you how to write a couple of documents to comply with all of these laws and regulations. So after you watch this video, you'll have a clear idea on what the requirements are in Denmark and also what steps you need to take to comply with them. Okay, let's see what laws and regulations did Denmark publish as part of this NIS2 transposition process. So until the moment of recording this video, Denmark has published this NIS2 Act number 434, and it's also called Act on Measures to Achieve a High Level of Cybersecurity, and this law was published in 2025. And two more laws were published in 2025. So Act on Enhanced Preparedness for the Energy Sector, and this is number 258. And there is this also Act on Emergency and Security Preparedness in the Telecommunications Sector. This one is 435. And this is not all. Denmark has also published at least 4 executive orders where they specify more details on the implementation of cybersecurity, and all of them were also published in 2025. So as you can see, Denmark has this one top-level law, and then it has laws and regulations for some of these critical infrastructure sectors where they specify more details. And in the description below, you'll find links to the original text of these laws and regulations. Now, what is the difference between all of these laws and regulations? So this top-level NIS2 law, number 434, basically describes some general things. Let's say the roles of these competent authorities for cybersecurity, also how the supervision of the companies that are within the NIS2 scope needs to be performed. It specifies also which companies need to comply, so exact criteria for those companies that actually fall under the NIS2 scope. And this law also gives some, I would say, generic cybersecurity requirements, but it does not really go into too much detail. Now, these other two laws, but especially these executive orders, they go into much more details when it comes to specific requirements for cybersecurity. And to make things a little bit more complicated here, there is also this Commission Implementing Regulation, or CIR 2024-2690. And this document was published by the European Union, and it is actually valid not only in Denmark, it's valid also in all 27 European member states. And this CIR actually specifies very detailed security rules that companies need to comply, but it is actually valid not for all the companies in the NIS2 scope, only for digital critical infrastructure companies. So what does this mean? If your company is operating in Denmark and if it is classified as a critical infrastructure company, and if it is a digital critical infrastructure company, then it needs to comply with Danish NIS2 law, but also with this CIR, because it's again applicable to all the companies in all EU countries. But it would also need to comply with a specific, let's say, sector-based NIS2 executive order in Denmark, if this is something that Denmark would publish in the future. Of course, we'll have to wait and see if this is something that happens. And by the way, when I show you these laws and regulations in a minute, I'll show you exactly what are these 3 sectors that actually cover these digital critical infrastructure companies. However, if your company operates in Denmark and it is not a digital company, for example, let's say that it belongs to energy sector, then it will have to comply only with this NIS2 law, and then this specific law for security in energy sector, and then executive order for energy sector. So, for example, energy companies or all these 15 sectors that are not digital critical infrastructure companies, they do not need to comply with CIR. And in the description below, you'll find a link to an article which explains more details about this CIR. Okay, let me now show you a couple of key requirements from these Danish laws and regulations. Okay, I'm showing you now this Act on Measures to Ensure a High Level of Cybersecurity, or NIS2 Act. This is the law number 434, as you can see here, and here on the left hand side you can see the original in Danish, whereas on the right hand side you can actually see the automatic translation into English. And by the way, it's a pretty good translation, so you can actually rely on this English as well. Okay, so let's see what it says. So basically here in this chapter 1, the scope is defined, so basically which companies need to comply here with, and here also further definitions on basically if a company is not registered in European Union, but it provides only the services. If we go further, let me actually click here, so significant and important entities. So here the law actually specifies which are significant, which are important entities, and then when you scroll down you can actually see the cybersecurity measures. This is in chapter 2, but as you can see they are very high level. It doesn't really say much here because all these other laws and regulations go into much more detail. There is, however, this subsection number 2, which specifies that actually the members of the management body actually have to go through this cybersecurity risk management, and also that employees need to go through these as well. And by the way, you can take a look at my other video, which explains how to organize this NIS2 cybersecurity awareness and training. Okay, when we go further, you will see this section about the registration and then about incident notifications. And again, here you have an early warning, initial assessment, interim report, final report, status report. Basically here, this NIS2 law follows very closely what the NIS2 directive is saying, so there is not much difference here. And then you have this section around supervision and enforcement. Again, nothing much here, except this Article 23. Basically it says that the competent authority can actually temporarily suspend a certification or a part of these relevant services if actually the company does not comply with the NIS2 law and other regulations, and actually forbids the manager or the executive in charge also from performing this role. So this is something actually that does not exist in NIS2 directive. It also does not exist in the CIR, and you can actually see that this is what we marked here in English version in red. So whenever you see this red, this means that this is something on top of these European directive and CIR. So this is something that is specific only for Denmark. Okay, when I scroll further, basically the most interesting part here are these annexes. So here you can actually see the list of all the sectors that are covered with NIS2 law, and this aligns 100% with what the NIS2 directive says. I'll just briefly scroll through this so you can see energy, then transportation, then you have these banking activities, financial market infrastructure, also health, and then you have drinking water, wastewater, digital infrastructure. And by the way, this is the first of these three sectors that are relevant for digital companies. And then you have this management of IT services. This is the second of these three. Then you have public administration, you have space. And then you have postal courier services, waste management, manufacturing, production and processing of foods, manufacturing again, and then digital providers. This is the third sector of these three for digital companies, and finally research organizations. So no surprises here, everything is the same as in NIS2 directive. Okay, now let's see some sector-specific laws and regulations. So first of all, this law number 258, and this one is specific for energy sector. As you can see, this is Act on Enhancing Preparedness. Anyway, when you scroll down, you will see again the scope, so basically to which companies in the energy sector it applies to. And yeah, let me scroll further and show you, so basically here it describes this business resilience and preparedness. So what the company needs to have for this preparedness. Again, it's still, I would say, kind of high level, doesn't go into too many details. And so let me just show you one thing that is kind of specific for this law, and that the companies need to perform this background check and security clearance. So something that actually this does not really exist in NIS2 directive or CIR. And then the rest of the document doesn't provide any more details. And now let's go to this implementing regulation for energy sector. So this is the executive order number 260. on resilience and preparedness for energy sector. So first of all, here you will see various detailed rules that do not exist in any of these previous two laws. So here you have some certain roles and responsibilities that need to be performed. As you can see here, every 3 years companies need to inform actually this Danish energy agency, and also here in this section 11. And then there is this requirement on emergency planning. Again, this is pretty much detailed and much more specific than in any other two laws. And here, specification and requirements around record keeping. Let's see some other requirements here for exercising and testing. Again, this goes into much more detail than before. All of these sections here are about what exercising and testing needs to be. And then there is a section around education and awareness. Also what companies need to do, also about risk assessment. Let me skip further to supplier management. So as you can see here, lots of requirements for how to manage suppliers. Also there is this section about how to handle IT security services, and then how to handle infrastructure resilience. And then let me show you this how to handle security in network and information systems. Again, pretty much detailed here on what companies need to perform. As you can see here, access control, backup management, cryptography, network segmentation, logging and monitoring, and so on. Yeah, there is also a section here about incident management. Okay, and let's see the supervision. So basically there you have detailed rules on actually what this Danish energy agency can do, and also a couple of requirements around preparedness. So as you can see, this is much more detailed than this top level NIS2 law, but also than this law related to energy sector. All right, let's now switch to this telecommunication sector. So as you can see here, you have this law number 435 for security and emergency preparedness in the telecommunication sector. And again, here you have the specifications regarding the scope to which telecommunication companies this law applies to. It does specify some high-level requirements for security, but doesn't really go into too much details here. So it's very similar to this law for energy sector. And when you scroll down, you will also find these requirements related to notifications. And yeah, there is only one, let's say, requirement that does not exist actually in other laws and regulations. This is about this preliminary report. This is something, let's say, that is different from NIS2 directive and NIS2 law. And then let's skip to this emergency situation. So it's pretty detailed here in explaining what are the rules and requirements related to these emergency situations and who actually needs to do what. There is also this requirement about security approvals. And basically this is, these are the most interesting things around this law. So let me just browse through this quickly. So let's go now to this implementing regulations for telecommunication sector. So as you can see here is this BEC 621. This is basically executive order for risk management and security in telecommunication sector. And when you scroll down, again, you have some definitions here. And then you have basically what this risk assessment, risk analysis needs to do. And interestingly enough, here you have this reference to ISO 27001, ISO 27005, again 27001. So basically here it is pretty clearly specified that these companies need to comply with either 27001 or something that is similar to this standard. And when we scroll down, you will see several requirements for security measures, and some of them are actually specific only for Denmark for this telecommunication sector. And these requirements, like here, do not exist in the CIR. Also here, this subsection 2. And then you have some other requirements like handling incidents, vulnerabilities, also this cooperation between telecommunication providers and so on. Okay, let's move on to the second implementing regulation for telecom sector. This is BEC number 622. It's executive order on emergency preparedness and crisis management in telecommunication sector. And when you scroll down, actually here you'll find this one interesting thing or interesting requirement. And this is basically around crisis management and basically what this crisis management plan needs to contain. So as you can see here, there are several requirements on this crisis management plan. Okay, and let's move on to this last implementing regulation. This one is BEC number 1069. This is an executive order about notification obligations for telecommunication sector. And when you scroll down, you will actually see several requirements here on what kind of notifications need to be delivered to which government bodies. So no similar requirements exist in other NIS2 directive or CIR or any particular laws in particular EU countries. As you can see here, quite many of these notification rules are specified here. Okay, let me now show you a couple of examples of how you can write documents to cover all of these requirements, but also how to reduce the workload for this compliance effort. Okay, I'm showing you now this crisis management plan from Advisera's NIS2 documentation toolkit, and again here on the left hand side you can see the document in Danish, and on the right hand side is exactly the same document in English. And when I scroll down to this table of contents, you will actually see how this document is structured. So it has all the elements that are necessary according to various laws and regulations and standards. And let's just see what are the references here. As you can see, there are several references to various of these laws and regulations that I was showing you, and also to specific articles within these laws and regulations. There is also this reference to the NIS2 directive, to this CIR 2690, also to this ENISA technical implementation guidance. I did not mention this, but this is the guidance related to CIR, and also this ISO 22301, which is the business continuity standard. And I'll come back to why these references are important, but let me now show you actually one detail from this document, from this section 7. So let me just scroll to this also in English. As you can see, here is a table that specifies what are the decisions that can be made when actually a company is in some kind of a crisis. And here you can actually see this row here speaks about the prioritization of restoration of specific parts of the infrastructure. And actually then you can see there a comment. Let me just show you this comment. It basically says that this is here because of this law number 435. So this is something that was specifically inserted because of this law, because there is no other requirement to have something like this. Also, this next row here speaks about this prioritization of transmissions. Again, this is something that is specifically inserted here because of this law number 438. Which brings me basically to the question of how to build these documents to actually make them, I would say, suited for the company, but also that are completely aligned with all of these laws and regulations. And what we did in Advisera, we use this three-step process. I'm not saying that you have to use the same process, but it certainly worked for us. So first, we built all the documents based on these international standards like ISO 27001 for cybersecurity and ISO 22301 for business continuity. And then in the second step, we adapt these documents for these European level regulations, meaning NIS2 directive, but also we adapt them for CIR 2690 and according to this ENISA guidance. And once we complete actually these two steps, then only we actually move on to this third step where we actually adapt them to a particular country and to laws and regulations in that particular country. And this is where we actually inserted these specific requirements, for example, for this Danish law 435. And by using these three steps, what you actually achieve is that on one hand, you're following the best practices for cybersecurity and business continuity management because of these international standards. You're also fully aligned with any kind of requirements for digital companies according to this CIR 2690. And of course, you're fully aligned with the requirements of local laws and regulations. And of course, if you don't have time to build all of these documents on your own, you can always use Advisera's documentation toolkit and with all the necessary templates, and you'll find the link in the description below. Okay, let's see another document. So I'm showing you now this risk assessment methodology. Let's see briefly the structure of the document. So as you can see, there are several sections here. Mandatory cybersecurity measures, what are the principles, how to perform a risk assessment, single point of failure, all these things. And again, I wanted to show you some specific detail here in this section 3.2 2. Let me scroll the English version as well. And here you can actually see that there is this addition about logical, physical access control, physical security, perimeter, these kind of things. And when you open the content, which actually explains why this is here, you can actually see that there is this reference to this Executive Order 621. So again, this document was based on 27001, but was adapted to CIR and ultimately to all of these Danish laws and regulations. And by the way, there is a separate video that I recorded on how to actually write this risk assessment methodology. You can find the link in the description below. Okay, I hope this was helpful, and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions about NIS2 transposition in Denmark, and I'll help you as soon as I can. And to access this NIS2 documentation toolkit in Danish that I was showing you, click the link in the description below, and you'll be able to open a free demo account and then download free demo documents from this toolkit. And see also my next video, which gives you a bit more detailed description on how this NIS2 documentation toolkit works. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel not to miss any of my new videos. And I publish videos about cybersecurity, compliance and governance, and AI governance every week. Thanks for watching.